Black mail order bride sat shivering, until the cowboy covered her with his coat, the heavy wool draping around the trembling girl's shoulders as bitter wind cut across the train platform like judgment itself. The townspeople whispered with cruel satisfaction, watching another disposable arrangement arrive for the merchant's schemes. She would disappear like the others, silent, forgotten, erased from memory within months. But the giant cowboy saw something different in her careful eyes, something that made him linger when wisdom demanded he walk away. What neither understood was that her survival depended on a deception so dangerous it could destroy them both, while the merchant's operation reached far beyond this frozen outpost into territories where women vanished without trace. Her hidden knowledge could topple an empire of exploitation or get her killed trying. Would the cowboy's unexpected kindness save her, or damn them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The general store's wooden floors creaked under Ada Grace's tired feet as she scrubbed the same spot for the third time. Her fingers, raw from the harsh lye soap, moved in steady circles across the planks. Samuel Wheaton watched from behind his counter like a hawk studying prey. 3 days had passed since her arrival in Copper Ridge. 3 days of sleeping on a thin blanket in the store's back room. 3 days of working from dawn until well past dark. Samuel had confiscated her small carpet bag the moment she stepped off the train. He claimed her belongings needed inspection. The bag sat unopened on his desk, taunting her with memories of her former life in Philadelphia. The bell above the door chimed as Martha Jennings entered. The older woman's weathered hands carried a basket of fresh bread. Her eyes found Ada immediately, lingering with concern. Samuel's voice cut through the silence. "Mrs. Jennings, what brings you to my establishment?" Martha's gaze never left Ada. "Need some flour. Running low at the blacksmith shop." Ada continued scrubbing, but her ears strained to catch every word. Martha had been watching her these past days, always appearing when Samuel's voice grew too sharp, always finding reasons to visit the store. Samuel retrieved a sack of flour from the shelf. His movements were deliberate, calculating. "That'll be $2. Martha paid without protest. As she turned to leave, her eyes met Ada's for a brief moment. The older woman's expression carried a warning Ada couldn't yet decipher. The door closed with another chime. Samuel's attention returned to Ada like a weight settling on her shoulders. "You're moving too slow," he said. "The floor should have been finished an hour ago." Ada's hands stilled. Back in Philadelphia, she had worked alongside some of the territory's sharpest legal minds. She had drafted contracts that freed enslaved families. She had researched case law that changed lives. Now she scrubbed floors for a man who treated her like property. But she had learned patience working with the Underground Railroad. She had learned to watch, to listen, to wait for the right moment. Samuel's ledger lay open on his counter. From her position on the floor, Ada could see columns of numbers. Names written in his cramped handwriting, amounts that seemed too large for simple store transactions. Her legal training whispered warnings. The correspondence she had glimpsed before he snatched it away. The way other townspeople avoided his gaze. The questions about previous mail-order brides that earned only silence. The afternoon sun began its descent toward the mountain peaks. Samuel checked his pocket watch with practiced efficiency. "You'll need to fetch the supplies from the train depot," he said. "Should have arrived on the afternoon freight." Ada looked down at her thin dress, the same traveling outfit she had worn from Philadelphia. The mountain wind had grown vicious as winter deepened. "Might I borrow a coat?" she asked quietly. Samuel's laugh held no warmth. "You'll manage fine. The cold builds character." Ada stood slowly. Her knees protested from hours of scrubbing. She had survived worse than cold. During her final weeks in Philadelphia, she had slept in an unheated boarding house room while dodging men who wanted to silence her legal work permanently. The depot sat 3 blocks away. Each step through the bitter wind reminded Ada of her precarious position. She was alone in a town where women like her simply disappeared. The freight office clerk handed her a manifest without looking up. "Wheaton's order. Loading dock around back." Ada walked to the platform where freight cars sat like metal beasts in the fading light. The wind cut through her dress with knife-like precision. Her whole body began to shake. Other people moved about their business, men in heavy coats, women wrapped in wool shawls. They glanced at her with mixture of curiosity and disdain. The trembling girl who belonged to Samuel Wheaton. The freight took longer to locate than expected. Crates of goods mixed with personal shipments. Ada's training had taught her to read quickly, to memorize details. The shipping labels told stories, names repeating too often, destinations that made no sense for a simple general store. By the time she found Samuel's order, full darkness had settled over Copper Ridge. The cold had moved beyond discomfort into something dangerous. Her hands could barely grip the manifest. She stood on the platform waiting for the depot worker to load her cart. Her body shook so violently she could barely stand. The wind howled between the train cars like a living thing seeking to devour her warmth. Heavy footsteps approached across the wooden planks. Ada looked up to see a massive figure emerging from the shadows. Bear Maddox stood nearly 7 feet tall, his shoulders broad enough to block the wind. Without a word, he removed his heavy coat. The garment, still warm from his body heat, settled around her shoulders like salvation. The wool smelled of honest work and leather, of kindness in a place where kindness seemed extinct. Ada looked up into his weathered face. His eyes held depths she hadn't expected, pain mixed with something protective and fierce. "Thank you," she whispered. Bear nodded once. Then he helped load her cart without being asked. His massive hands made quick work of the heavy crates. From across the street, other townspeople watched with disapproval. Their whispers carried on the wind like poison. But for the first time since arriving in Copper Ridge, Ada felt something besides fear. She felt hope. And hope, she had learned during her darkest days in Philadelphia, could be the most dangerous feeling of all. Ada returned to the store long after Samuel expected her. The borrowed coat still wrapped around her shoulders like armor. Samuel's eyes narrowed when he saw Bear's distinctive wool garment. "You're late," Samuel said. His voice carried the edge Ada had learned to fear. "The freight took time to locate," Ada replied quietly. She began removing the coat. Samuel's hand shot out and gripped her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make his point clear. "Don't make excuses, and don't accept charity from men above your station." Ada felt the familiar surge of anger she had learned to suppress. In Philadelphia, she had faced down prosecutors twice her age. She had argued legal points that freed innocent people from bondage. Now she stood silent while a small-town merchant treated her like property. But silence served a purpose. Samuel's grip loosened as she nodded submissively. He believed her act completely. The next morning brought new indignities. Samuel woke her before dawn with a list of tasks impossible to complete before nightfall. Inventory the entire store. Scrub every surface until it gleamed. Organize the storage room that hadn't been touched in months. Ada worked steadily, but her trained eye continued cataloging inconsistencies. The inventory numbers in Samuel's ledger didn't match the actual stock. Expensive items appeared and disappeared without corresponding sales records. Money changed hands in amounts that made no sense for a frontier general store. During her lunch break, Martha Jennings appeared again. This time she browsed the shelves with deliberate slowness, waiting until Samuel stepped outside. "Child," Martha whispered urgently, "you need to know something about the women who came before you." Ada's hand stilled on the bolt of fabric she was organizing. "What women?" "3 in the past 2 years. Mail-order brides, just like you. They worked in this store just like you." Martha's voice dropped even lower. "None of them stayed past 2 months." The implications hit Ada like physical blows. "Where did they go?" "Samuel claims they ran off, found better opportunities elsewhere." Martha's eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. "But their belongings stayed behind." "Their money, too." Ada's legal mind immediately grasped the pattern. Women arrived with dowries and savings. They disappeared without their possessions. Samuel kept everything. That evening, Ada waited until Samuel retired to his rooms above the store. Then she crept to his office with skills learned during midnight research sessions in Philadelphia law libraries. The locked drawer that contained her carpet bag also held other items, personal belongings that clearly belonged to different women. Jewelry, photographs, letters from families back east, evidence of crimes that went far beyond simple theft. Ada photographed everything in her memory, a skill developed during years of legal training. Names, dates, amounts, a pattern of deliberate exploitation that made her stomach turn. Samuel's correspondence lay in another drawer, unlocked due to his arrogance. Ada read quickly, absorbing details that painted an even darker picture, references to merchandise and shipments. Coded language she recognized from her work with Underground Railroad cases. Samuel wasn't just robbing mail-order brides, he was selling them. The office door creaked. Ada spun around to find Samuel silhouetted in the doorway. His face held none of the false pleasantry he showed in public. "Curious little thing, aren't you?" Samuel stepped into the room. "Always wondered when you'd show your true nature." Ada's heart hammered against her ribs. Her legal training had prepared her for courtroom battles, not physical confrontation. Samuel moved closer, backing her against the desk. "The other girls tried snooping too," Samuel continued. "Right before their luck ran out." The front doorbell chimed. Heavy footsteps echoed through the store. Samuel's expression shifted from menace to annoyance. "Wheaton," Bear's deep voice called out. "Need supplies for the morning drive." Samuel's jaw tightened, but Bear Maddox's reputation in Copper Ridge meant even Samuel couldn't simply ignore him. "Store's closed," Samuel replied, not moving from the office doorway. "Won't take but a minute," Bear said. His footsteps grew closer. Samuel shot Ada a warning look that promised consequences later. Then he stepped out to deal with his unwanted customer. Ada used the distraction to memorize the final crucial details from Samuel's correspondence. Partner names, shipment schedules, destination towns. Everything needed to build a legal case that would hold up in territorial court. Bear's presence filled the store's main room. He moved with deliberate slowness, examining merchandise with the patience of a man accustomed to waiting. His eyes found Ada through the office doorway, assessing her safety with a glance. "This rope looks frayed," Bear commented, handling the merchandise with excessive care. "Wouldn't want it failing when lives depend on it." The words carried deeper meaning. Ada recognized the careful phrasing of a man sending messages beneath surface conversation. Bear understood danger when he saw it. Samuel completed the sale with barely controlled irritation. Bear paid exact change and gathered his purchases with the same deliberate pace. As he reached the door, Bear's eyes met Ada's one more time. "Some things can't be rushed," he said quietly. "But when the time comes, everything happens fast." The door closed behind him, leaving Ada alone with Samuel's renewed suspicion. But something had changed during Bear's visit. Ada no longer felt completely isolated. She had an ally. And more importantly, she had the information needed to destroy Samuel's operation. Her years of legal training had taught her that knowledge was power. Now she needed to figure out how to use that power before Samuel decided her luck had run out too. Ada found her opportunity 3 days later. Samuel left for his monthly supply run to the larger town of Helena. He would be gone until evening, leaving Ada with strict instructions to mind the store. The moment his wagon disappeared down the mountain road, Ada locked the front door and flipped the closed sign. She had work to do that couldn't wait for customer interruptions. Martha arrived within the hour, as if she had been watching for Samuel's departure. Her knock carried a specific rhythm Ada had learned to recognize. "Time we talked properly," Martha said once inside. She moved to the window, checking the street with practiced caution. Ada led her to Samuel's office. The older woman's eyes widened at the sight of the opened drawers and scattered correspondence. "You've been busy," Martha observed. "I found evidence of what happened to the other women," Ada said. "Samuel isn't just robbing mail-order brides. He's selling them to work camps throughout the territory." Martha's face hardened with remembered pain. I suspected as much. 5 years ago, I was one of those women. The confession hung between them like a bridge finally built. Ada waited for Martha to continue. Samuel had me working 18-hour days, taking my money bit by bit, making promises about marriage that never came true. Martha's hands clenched into fists. Then he told me about a wonderful opportunity, a family in need of help. Good wages, respectable work. But you escaped, Ada said. Pure luck. The blacksmith, Tom Jennings, happened to be in town when Samuel was loading me into the wagon. Tom had been widowed 2 years and lonely. He offered to marry me on the spot. Martha's eyes softened briefly. Real marriage, real partnership. Samuel couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. Ada processed this information with her legal training. The other women weren't so fortunate. No, they vanished into the mountain camps, logging operations, mining claims, remote ranches, places where questions don't get asked. Heavy footsteps approached the store's front entrance. Both women froze. The steps belonged to someone much larger than Samuel. Bear's silhouette filled the front window. He cupped his hands against the glass, peering inside with concern. Ada hurried to unlock the door. Saw the closed sign, Bear said. Wanted to make sure you were safe. Martha studied Bear with new interest. Tom mentioned you've been asking questions about Samuel's business arrangements. Bear nodded slowly. Something doesn't sit right. The way mail-order brides disappear from this town. Always the same story. Always the same timing. Ada made a decision that would have been impossible a week ago. I need to show you both something. She led them to Samuel's office and spread the correspondence across his desk. Bear examined the papers with intense concentration, his finger tracing words he recognized. Can't read most of this, Bear admitted. But these numbers look like shipping manifests, and these names keep repeating. They are shipping manifests, Ada confirmed, for human cargo. Samuel has been trafficking women throughout Montana Territory for at least 3 years. Martha leaned over the desk, pointing to specific entries. This name here, Elias Kavanaugh. He owns half the mining claims in the region. And these amounts match what Samuel charges for mail-order bride arrangements. Bear's expression darkened. Kavanaugh's been expanding his operations, always complaining about labor shortages. Never thought he'd stoop to buying people. Ada felt the familiar surge of purpose she had experienced during her Philadelphia legal work. We have evidence of federal crimes, mail fraud, trafficking, conspiracy, but we need more than correspondence to build a prosecution case. What kind of evidence? Bear asked. Witness testimony, financial records showing money transfers, documentation of the actual trafficking routes. Ada organized the papers with methodical precision. And we need to identify the current victims before they disappear permanently. Martha moved to the store's main room, checking the street again. Samuel will be back before dark. We need to be careful about our meetings. Bear rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. There's a territorial judge scheduled to visit Copper Ridge next month. Circuit court session. If we could present evidence, then... That gives us 4 weeks to build an airtight case, Ada said. Her legal training kicked into high gear, organizing priorities and timelines. Martha, I need you to identify other women in town who might have been victims or witnesses. I can do that. Tom knows everyone. People trust the blacksmith. Ada turned to Bear. I need access to places Samuel frequents, his banking arrangements, his meetings with Kavanaugh. Can you provide that kind of information? Bear nodded grimly. I know his routines, and I know which ranch hands have been asking suspicious questions about available women. They spent the next hour planning their investigation. Ada felt the familiar thrill of building a legal strategy, but this case carried personal stakes her Philadelphia work had never involved. Samuel's return interrupted their planning session. The wagon's approach sent Martha hurrying out the back entrance while Bear exited through the front door with a casual purchase. Ada resumed her position behind the store counter, but everything had changed. She was no longer a victim waiting to be trafficked. She was a legal advocate building a case that would destroy Samuel's operation and save countless women. Samuel entered with packages from Helena and suspicious eyes that swept the store for signs of disturbance. "Any customers today?" he asked. "A few," Ada replied mildly. "Quiet day, mostly." Samuel's gaze lingered on her face, searching for deception. But Ada had learned to project innocence while harboring revolutionary thoughts. Skills developed during her most dangerous cases in Philadelphia served her well in this frontier general store. That night, as Ada lay on her thin blanket in the back room, she reviewed their investigation plan with the thoroughness of an experienced prosecutor. 4 weeks to gather evidence, 4 weeks to save lives, 4 weeks to ensure justice finally reached Copper Ridge. The investigation progressed with careful precision over the following weeks. Ada and her allies met in secret locations throughout Copper Ridge. Martha's kitchen became their primary headquarters, safe from Samuel's watchful eyes. Bear brought disturbing intelligence from his ranch work. 3 mining camps had requisitioned female workers through Kavanaugh's employment agency. The requests specified women willing to work in remote locations for extended periods. No family connections required. Martha gathered testimonies from women throughout the town. Her position as the blacksmith's wife provided access to conversations normally hidden from outsiders. 2 current residents had survived trafficking attempts in other territories before finding safety in legitimate marriages. Ada synthesized their findings into comprehensive legal documentation. Her Philadelphia training proved invaluable as she organized evidence according to territorial and federal statutes. The case grew stronger each day, but Samuel's suspicions grew stronger too. He began restricting Ada's movements, requiring her to remain within sight at all times. He questioned customers about their conversations with her. He searched her bedding area nightly for hidden items. The pressure intensified when Elias Kavanaugh visited the store unexpectedly. Ada organized inventory in the back room while the 2 men conducted business in hushed voices. Their conversation carried enough for her trained ears to catch crucial details. A new shipment of workers needed by month's end. Payment arrangements for premium selections. Specific requirements for young, healthy specimens. The clinical language chilled Ada to her core. These men discussed human lives like livestock transactions. Kavanaugh's visit lasted nearly an hour. When he finally left, Samuel's demeanor had shifted completely. He watched Ada with predatory focus that made her skin crawl. That evening, Samuel made his intentions clear. "You've been asking too many questions," he said, "making people curious about things that don't concern them." Ada maintained her submissive facade despite her hammering heart. "I only speak when customers address me directly. Maybe it's time for a change of scenery. I know a family up north looking for domestic help. Remote location, but good steady work." The same offer Martha had described receiving 5 years earlier. Ada recognized the trafficking script being deployed against her. "I'm content here," Ada replied carefully. "Learning the business, contributing to the store's success." Samuel's smile held no warmth. "Decision's not yours to make. I'll be discussing arrangements with Mr. Kavanaugh tomorrow." Ada spent that night awake, calculating options with desperate clarity. Their legal case needed more time to develop. But Samuel wasn't going to provide that time. The next morning brought unexpected salvation. Judge Harrison arrived in Copper Ridge 3 days ahead of schedule due to a canceled court session in another town. Bear brought the news during his regular supply purchase. Judge set up temporary court in the church, taking cases all week instead of just weekend sessions. Samuel cursed under his breath. Ada recognized opportunity disguised as complication. Their investigation might be incomplete, but presenting preliminary evidence now could provide protection from immediate trafficking. During Samuel's lunch break, Ada made her most dangerous decision. She unlocked Samuel's private safe using skills learned during covert legal work in Philadelphia. The contents exceeded her worst fears. Contracts for dozens of women sold throughout the territory. Financial records showing payments from mining companies, logging operations, and remote ranches. Correspondence detailing specific requirements for physical attributes and work capabilities. Most damning of all, a ledger tracking mortality rates among trafficked workers. Samuel and Kavanaugh maintained actuarial tables calculating expected lifespans for different types of labor. Ada photographed everything in her memory with the precision of desperation. These documents could hang both men under territorial law, but footsteps approached the store earlier than expected. Samuel had returned from lunch ahead of schedule. Ada locked the safe and moved to the front counter with seconds to spare. Samuel entered with Kavanaugh close behind, their expressions grim with purpose. "We've decided not to wait," Samuel announced. "You'll be leaving tomorrow morning. Early transport to your new position." Kavanaugh studied Ada like merchandise being evaluated. "She'll do fine at the logging camp. They prefer the educated ones for record-keeping before the real work begins." The threat was clear and immediate. Ada had less than 18 hours before disappearing into the same system that had consumed Samuel's previous victims. That evening, after Samuel locked her into the back room, Ada executed her escape plan. The window latch had been deliberately loosened during previous weeks of preparation. She squeezed through the narrow opening and dropped into the alley behind the store. Martha waited with Bear in the shadows. They had been monitoring Samuel's movements, ready to intervene when the situation became critical. "Judge Harrison needs to hear our evidence tonight," Ada said. "Samuel plans to ship me out tomorrow morning." Bear nodded grimly. "Tom's already spoken to the judge, arranged a private meeting at the church." They moved through Copper Ridge's dark streets like shadows, carrying documentation that could expose the territory's most profitable criminal enterprise. Ada felt the familiar mixture of fear and determination that had sustained her through Philadelphia's most dangerous cases. Judge Harrison waited in the church with Tom Jennings providing security. The older man examined their evidence with the thoroughness of experienced jurisprudence. "This documentation is comprehensive," the judge said finally, "but prosecution requires testimony from current victims. Can you provide that?" Ada met his gaze with the confidence her legal training had instilled. "Your Honor, I am a current victim. And I'm prepared to testify against both Samuel Wheaton and Elias Kavanaugh tomorrow morning." The judge's expression shifted from professional interest to personal outrage. "Then we'll convene emergency court at dawn, before they have opportunity to destroy evidence or eliminate witnesses." Dawn broke over Copper Ridge with the sound of church bells summoning the entire town. Judge Harrison had ordered a public hearing, transforming the morning into a reckoning nobody had anticipated. Ada stood outside the church wearing her best dress, borrowed from Martha's wardrobe. Her carpet bag, finally returned from Samuel's office by court order, sat at her feet containing the legal documents that would determine her fate. Bear approached through the gathering crowd. His massive frame provided reassurance. But Ada noticed tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless preparation. "Samuel's been asking questions all morning," Bear reported quietly, "trying to figure out who talked to the judge. Kavanaugh rode in an hour ago with 3 of his ranch hands." Ada surveyed the crowd filling the church steps. Half the town had turned out, drawn by rumors of scandal involving their most prominent citizens. Their faces showed mixture of curiosity and skepticism that Ada recognized from courtroom galleries. Judge Harrison emerged from the church with official bearing that commanded immediate attention. "Court is now in session. All parties and witnesses will present themselves for testimony regarding charges of mail fraud and human trafficking." Samuel pushed through the crowd with Kavanaugh close behind. Both men maintained facades of indignant innocence, but Ada caught the desperation lurking beneath their performance. Inside the church, makeshift court proceedings transformed the sacred space into an arena of justice. Judge Harrison took position at the pulpit, while townspeople filled every pew like a congregation witnessing revelation. "The territory calls Ada Grace to testify," the judge announced. Ada walked to the front of the church, with steps that echoed through absolute silence. Every eye in Copper Ridge focused on the woman they had dismissed as powerless chattel. She raised her right hand for oath-taking with steady purpose. Her legal training had prepared her for this moment across countless Philadelphia courtrooms. "State your full name and occupation for the record," Judge Harrison instructed. "Ada Grace Patterson, legal clerk specializing in civil rights and territorial law." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Samuel's face drained of color as Ada's true credentials destroyed his assumptions about her education and capabilities. Ada presented her evidence with prosecutorial precision. She detailed Samuel's fraudulent mail-order bride advertisements, his confiscation of personal property, and his systematic exploitation of vulnerable women. The congregation listened with growing horror as Ada described the trafficking operation's scope. Mining camps, logging operations, and remote ranches throughout Montana Territory had been purchasing human labor through Kavanaugh's network. The defendant, Samuel Wheaton, maintains detailed records of these transactions, Ada continued. She produced photocopied documents from Samuel's safe, each page representing lives destroyed by calculated cruelty. Samuel leaped to his feet in desperate protest. "Your Honor, this woman is my legal wife under territorial marriage contract. Her testimony cannot be admitted against her husband." Ada had anticipated this defense. She withdrew the original marriage documents from her carpetbag with triumphant precision. "The contract in question contains fraudulent terms that violate territorial marriage statutes," Ada stated. "Furthermore, no legal marriage ceremony was ever performed. Samuel Wheaton has no lawful claim to my person or testimony." Judge Harrison examined the documents with judicial thoroughness. His expression grew darker as he absorbed the legal implications. Bear stood to provide supporting testimony. His massive frame commanded respect as he described witnessing Samuel's abusive treatment and suspicious business practices. "I've been investigating missing women in this territory for 2 years," Bear said. His voice carried weight that made the congregation lean forward. "Always the same pattern. Mail-order brides arriving, working in impossible conditions, then disappearing without their belongings." Martha took the stand next, her testimony providing crucial historical context. She detailed her own near-trafficking experience and identified other women who had survived similar attempts in neighboring towns. The evidence mounted with devastating effect. Financial records showed payments flowing from Kavanaugh's mining operations to Samuel's store accounts. Shipping manifests documented human cargo transported throughout the territory. Kavanaugh attempted his own defense by claiming ignorance of Samuel's methods. "I hired workers through legitimate employment agencies," he insisted. "Any irregularities in their recruitment were unknown to me." Ada dismantled his defense with surgical precision. The defendant's correspondence specifically requests women with no family connections and willingness to work in remote locations. These requirements serve no legitimate employment purpose. She produced letters in Kavanaugh's handwriting detailing physical requirements for purchased workers. The clinical language revealed calculations of human value that sickened the listening congregation. Judge Harrison called for deliberation recess, but the outcome seemed inevitable. The evidence presented had exposed systematic criminality that demanded territorial justice. During the break, Ada noticed the change in how townspeople regarded her. No longer the dismissed mail-order bride, she had transformed into a legal advocate who commanded respect through competence and moral authority. Samuel made one final desperate attempt at escape. He approached Ada during recess with threats disguised as negotiations. "You don't understand the forces you're challenging," Samuel hissed. "This operation has protection at territorial levels. You're signing your own death warrant." Bear materialized beside Samuel with protective instincts that needed no verbal expression. Samuel retreated, recognizing physical confrontation would only worsen his legal position. Judge Harrison reconvened court with verdict that surprised nobody who had witnessed the morning's testimony. Samuel Wheaton and Elias Kavanaugh are found guilty of mail fraud, human trafficking, and conspiracy under territorial and federal statutes. The church erupted in murmurs of satisfaction and shocked recognition. Justice had arrived in Copper Ridge through the courage of a woman they had underestimated completely. Ada felt tears of relief mixing with triumph as the judge pronounced sentences that would remove both predators from positions where they could harm others. Her legal training had prepared her for victory, but this moment felt different. Personal stakes had transformed professional skills into instruments of liberation for herself and countless other women. 6 months after the trial, Ada stood in her new office above Tom Jennings' blacksmith shop. The wooden sign outside read, "Legal Aid Services, A. Patterson Attorney." Territorial certification had arrived 3 weeks earlier, recognizing her Philadelphia credentials and courtroom victories. The morning brought her third case of the week. A young woman named Sarah Mitchell sat across from Ada's desk, her story heartbreakingly familiar. Another mail-order bride arrangement gone wrong in a neighboring territory. Ada listened with the patience her legal training had instilled, taking detailed notes while Sarah described conditions that paralleled her own experience with Samuel Wheaton. The trafficking network had been larger than anyone realized. "I have documentation of similar operations in 4 other territories," Ada explained to Sarah. "Your case fits a pattern we've been tracking since the Copper Ridge prosecutions." Bear entered the office carrying a stack of correspondence from territorial authorities. His presence had become essential to Ada's legal practice, providing investigation skills that complemented her courtroom expertise. "Letters from 3 more judges requesting our assistance," Bear reported. "Word spreading about our success rate with trafficking cases." Ada reviewed the requests with professional satisfaction. Each invitation represented dozens of potential victims who might find justice through their collaborative efforts. The relationship between Ada and Bear had evolved naturally from alliance to partnership to something deeper and more permanent. Their engagement had been announced the previous month, celebrated by a community that now regarded them as essential protectors. Martha knocked on the office door carrying her weekly report from the Copper Ridge Women's Protection Committee. The organization had grown from informal meetings in her kitchen to official territorial recognition with funding from seized criminal assets. 2 new arrivals this week," Martha announced, both responding to our advertisements about legitimate opportunities and legal protections. Ada had revolutionized the mail-order bride system by establishing transparent contracts, legal oversight, and protection services. Women now arrived in Copper Ridge with guaranteed rights and community support instead of vulnerability and isolation. The afternoon brought news that would reshape their work entirely. A territorial marshal arrived with documents from the federal prosecutor's office in Washington. "Miss Patterson," the marshal began formally, "the Justice Department has reviewed your trafficking prosecutions. They're offering you a position as special federal prosecutor for territorial women's rights cases." Ada studied the official appointment papers with amazement. The federal government wanted to expand her Copper Ridge model throughout the Western territories. Bear read over her shoulder, his expression mixing pride with concern. "That would mean traveling to every territory where trafficking operations exist." The marshal nodded. "Extensive travel, but with full federal authority and resources. Your legal precedents could protect thousands of women." Ada considered the offer with careful deliberation. Her Philadelphia legal training had prepared her for exactly this type of systematic justice work, but Copper Ridge had become home in ways she hadn't expected. That evening, Ada walked to the train depot where her journey had begun 8 months earlier. The platform looked different now, transformed by memory and achievement, from a place of fear into a symbol of possibility. Bear joined her as sunset painted the mountains in brilliant colors. His presence remained comforting without being possessive, supportive without being controlling. "The federal position would be important work," Bear observed quietly. "But it would mean leaving what we've built here," Ada replied. "The legal practice, the protection committee, our life together." They stood in comfortable silence, weighing duty against personal happiness. Ada had learned that the most difficult decisions often involved choosing between multiple good options. The solution came to Ada with characteristic clarity. "What if we expanded our model instead of abandoning it?" Bear turned to face her with interest. "How do you mean?" "Train other legal advocates. Establish protection committees in every territory. Create a network that operates independently instead of depending on federal appointments." The idea gained momentum as Ada developed it aloud. They could maintain their base in Copper Ridge while building a system that would outlast any individual career or political administration. Martha appeared on the platform, carrying a lantern and wearing the satisfied expression of someone bringing good news. "Tom and I have been discussing your federal offer. We think Copper Ridge needs to make a counter-proposal." She handed Ada a document signed by 24 community leaders. The petition requested territorial authorization for a Western Women's Legal Defense Institute headquartered in Copper Ridge, with satellite offices throughout Montana Territory. Ada read the proposal with growing excitement. local funding, community support, and official territorial backing for exactly the type of systematic change she had envisioned. "The community wants you to stay," Martha continued, "but they also want to support your work expanding to help women everywhere." 6 months later, Ada stood on the same platform greeting another train arrival. This time she wore her own warm coat and carried official credentials as director of the Western Women's Legal Defense Institute. The young woman stepping off the train looked familiar in her uncertainty and hope. Ada approached with the same confidence she had developed during her own transformation from victim to advocate. "Welcome to Copper Ridge," Ada said warmly. "I'm Ada Patterson. We've been expecting you." The woman's face showed the surprise Ada remembered from her own arrival. "Expecting me?" "Sarah Mitchell wrote requesting our assistance with your situation. We've prepared temporary housing, legal consultation, and community support while you decide your next steps." Bear approached carrying the newcomer's luggage with the same gentle strength he had shown Ada during her darkest moments. The cycle of protection and empowerment continued with new participants but familiar dedication. Ada looked across the platform at the thriving community Copper Ridge had become. The train depot now featured posted notices about women's legal rights and protection services. The general store operated under new management, committed to fair treatment and honest business practices. Most importantly, no woman arrived alone and vulnerable as Ada had 8 months earlier. The community had transformed from passive observer of exploitation to active protector of the innocent. As the newest arrival settled into her temporary housing, Ada returned to her office to continue the work that had become her calling. Justice remained an ongoing project requiring constant vigilance and renewed commitment. But for the first time since leaving Philadelphia, Ada felt completely at home.